Broke up with my amazing ex-girlfriend to be single and realized my mistake too late after she moved on with someone better. I was with Brittany for 2.5 years, and honestly, there were so many things I loved about her. She had this amazing sense of humor that always kept things fun. She liked the same music and video games as me. She was gorgeous. She always gave me the most thoughtful gifts, and she was always there when I needed her. But around a year and some change into our relationship, my life got really hectic. I started an internship. On top of that, I already had a job and school to juggle. My days would start at 8 am and wouldn't end until midnight, sometimes even 2 am. There was no time to see anyone. Luckily, Brittany lived just a few blocks away, so after work, I hang with my friends and then pick her up around 3 or 4 am, whenever I was done with everything. Somewhere along the line, I started getting tired of being in a relationship. Everything she did began to annoy me. It's like every little thing set me off. I started to feel like hanging out with her was more of an obligation than something I actually wanted to do. I told myself as soon as my internship ended, things would go back to normal. I'd somehow rekindle what we had and everything would be fine again. But that didn't happen. Instead, things got worse. I found myself constantly canceling plans just to do things with my friends. I got so used to those late night hangouts. It felt easier to just see Brittany at my house late at night, or not at all. I didn't talk to her for days. Every time she'd ask if I was okay, I'd automatically say yes. The truth was, I never really learned how to communicate. When September rolled around, she tried to talk to me in person about her worries. I just shrugged it off and told her she had nothing to be concerned about, and then left to hang out with my friends. Later that night, she texted me saying that communicating with me was so hard because I always avoided the things she wanted to talk about. She told me she just wanted to know what was wrong, because she cared about us, and it felt like I was only spending time with her out of obligation. We met up. I told her she was perfect for me, but I just didn't want to be in a relationship anymore. I'd been in relationships since I was 16. I had never just been single, and I wanted that. She said she understood, and that she'd rather not be in a relationship with someone who wasn't giving it their all. She said she wouldn't hate me. That night, we broke up. I went out with my friends a lot after that. I tried talking to other girls, but being single wasn't at all what I expected. I wasn't drowning in attention. Girls just didn't seem interested in me. After a while, it hit me, maybe we needed a break, not a breakup. I was so annoyed with her, but if I had just had some space, who knows? Maybe things would have worked out. A few weeks later, I saw her in another city with a new guy. Her new boyfriend. We saw each other again at a show later that week to trade some of each other's stuff back. I didn't talk to her, I just turned around and walked away before she could even say anything. I regret doing that so much. I realized how wrong I was. So I told her how I really felt. That things weren't the same without her, that she completed me. That she was so good for me, and that I hadn't been good for her. I'd been shitty to her for most of the relationship because I just assumed she'd always be there. I told her she haunted me and my bed felt empty now. There was so much I wanted to show her. And things could be different. I could learn how to communicate and treat her the way she deserved. A few days later, she called me. She asked if I really meant everything I'd said, and if so, why hadn't I said any of it sooner? I was so happy she called. But then, a few days after that, she texted me saying she couldn't do it anymore. That she'd found someone who treats her really well, and although she didn't hate me, she just couldn't handle being in contact with me anymore. But I kept texting her for weeks after that, telling her I missed her. I couldn't understand how she could jump from one relationship straight into the next. She'd always been insecure about my ex and me, because my ex still posted about me all the time even now and hung out with a lot of my friends. Brittany always thought I'd moved on from my ex too quickly and would end up regretting it. Yet she'd gone and done the same thing. It was like everything we built was just quicksand sinking instantly, meaning nothing. She told me again she couldn't do this anymore. That my messages were mentally draining her and weren't good for my health either. That she was trying to move on but I kept contacting her. That she didn't just decide to get with someone else, she just happened to meet someone who made her happy. She reminded me how I'd told her we were never getting back together. I've seen her and her family a few times since we broke up. I saw her alone at a show last week and walked up to her. She was civil. I asked if she wanted to move further up in the crowd with me. We pushed through people together, but I lost her as soon as the show started. Later, I saw her when I was leaving and asked if she wanted to travel home with me and my friends, but the coat check line was long, so she left. I know deep down she still cares about me. I just don't think she'll last with her new boyfriend. But I regret leaving her, and I wish I could turn back time. What can I do now? Update 1. After everything that happened, I ended up stepping back and leaving her alone. It was a hard decision, but I knew deep down it was what I needed to fix myself. I could finally admit to myself just how terribly I had treated her. That guilt stuck with me, a constant reminder not to take good people for granted, especially someone who had been nothing but kind to me. No one deserves to be treated the way I treated her. During my time alone, I did a lot of soul searching. I started to unearth the reasons for my behavior, sifting through every excuse I built up to shield myself from accountability. In the process, I let myself experience more of the world. I slept around a little, yet I chased things in life that I wanted. Some of them were things I'm proud of, some I'm not. But in doing so, I figured out who I am, who I want to become, and what it's going to take to get there. I'm still working on myself, still climbing that hill, but the regret for how I once treated her lingered for a long time. Honestly, it still does. About 6 months after everything, I ran into her while she was jogging in the park. It was the first time I'd seen her since that night at the concert, and my heart just stopped. We ended up talking for ages, not about us or what happened, just about life, what we'd both been up to. She mentioned she and her new boyfriend had broken up, but I didn't take that as a sign to try anything. I figured we'd just go our separate ways again. To my surprise, we kept in touch. Eventually, we started meeting up to walk in the park together, just catching up, unwinding, week after week for nearly a year. She was understandably wary, and I did everything I could to respect that. But gradually, we grew close again. One day, she came over to my place, and something just clicked. We started going on real dates after that. This time, I made sure to do things right. I learned how to actually communicate, no more bottling things up and shutting her out. I discovered even more new things about her, how sweet she is, how funny and intelligent. It hit me hard that I'd landed the jackpot not once, but twice. And I swore I wouldn't mess it up this time around. It's been nearly a year since we found our way back to each other, and things are good. I'm still putting in the effort to be the best version of myself I can be. Whatever happens, I'm grateful for second chances and the hard lessons that brought me here. Update 2. A few months after I posted that, life decided to test everything I said I'd learned. A pipe burst in her apartment while she was at work. By the time she called me, water had already soaked through half her living room and turned a box of old journals into paper mache. I showed up with towels and boxes, and we spent the night hauling dripping books to her balcony and laying them out like wet birds. She cried once when she pulled out a wrinkled photo of her and her mom and the ink had bled. I held it up to the lamp and told her you could still make out their smiles. She moved in with me for a week or two while her place got fixed, and the week turned into 2 months. It sounds small, but cooking dinner together on a Tuesday after work did something I didn't expect. It slowed both of us down. I'd catch her in my hoodie at the stove, or doing a crossword on my couch, and my apartment stopped feeling like a place I crashed and started feeling like home. Little friction points showed up. Sure, she likes the bed made right after getting out of it, I don't. I leave my shoes wherever I take them off, she doesn't. We didn't blow up about any of it. We sat on the floor one night with takeout spread everywhere and actually talked through what we both needed. I never did that before. When her lease ended, she didn't go back. We signed one place together. I thought the universe might give us a break after that, but at a friend's birthday, I ran into the guy she dated after me. I recognized him before she did. He was across the room, laughing with someone I knew. Old me would have ignored it, or worse. I walked over and introduced myself. He looked at me like he expected a scene, and all I said was, "Hey, I was an asshole. If I ever made you feel like a stand-in for something unresolved, even indirectly, I'm sorry." He blinked like he didn't know what to do with that. We ended up standing by a kitchen island while he told me he'd always known she wasn't really his, that she still flinched when certain songs came on. It hit me how much damage lingers after you leave, even if you convince yourself you're the only one bleeding. Brittany came by and squeezed my hand like she couldn't believe I was handling it like a grown man. On the ride home, she rested her head on my shoulder and didn't say anything for a long time. The same week, my old ex sent me a long message at 2 a.m, one of those sprawling apologies that twists into remember whens. I stared at it for 10 minutes that felt like a test, and then I woke Brittany up. I showed her the message and blocked the number with her sitting right there. I didn't make a speech. I just put my phone face down and asked if she wanted water. She laughed into her blanket and said, "Yes, please," and we went back to sleep. It was simple, but it felt like a hinge closing. Then came the curveball. She forwarded me an email with no subject line and 1,000 exclamation marks in her eyes. A year-long spot in a program she dreamed about since she was 19 finally opened up Lisbon, starting in the fall. There was a time I would have taken that as something happening to me. This time, I just listened. She kept saying, "I don't want to blow up what we've built," and all I could think was how small I would feel if I was the reason she said no. We spent the next 3 nights mapping out time zones and flights on my coffee table. My job said I could work remote in chunks. We set real dates. I told her I'd be there the first 2 months, then back for a stretch, then back again. We wrote it down. We printed it out and put it on the fridge like a chore chart and laughed because it looked ridiculous. Before she left, we went back to the park where we used to walk in circles for hours because we were too scared to say anything that might break the fragile truce we'd made with each other. She brought one of the journals that survived the flood. Inside, there was an entry from right after we broke up the first time. It wasn't angry. It was tired. She wrote about how she hated sleeping on the left side of the bed because that used to be mine, and how she ran every morning until her feet ached so she wouldn't text me. She let me read it. My chest hurt in a way that wasn't dramatic, it was just heavy. We closed it, and I told her I was sorry again, and how sorry doesn't change the past but it can change what I do next. She kissed my hand like it meant something to hear it out loud. Lisbon was bright in a way my phone could never capture. I learned the tram schedule and how to order coffee the way she liked it. We made a little ritual of calling each other from opposite sides of the ocean at 10:30 my time, 3:30 hers. At first, the lag made everything feel like we were stepping on each other's sentences. We figured out a rhythm. When I flew home after the first stretch, my apartment felt too quiet and too clean. I missed her hair clogging the shower drain. We argued once, really argued, about something dumb that wasn't actually dumb, me forgetting to call after saying I would, her snapping because she'd had a day that was nothing but bureaucracy and a rude stranger her on a bus. I didn't disappear. I called back. I said, "We can be mad and still here." We were both quiet. Then we were okay. Her mom had a health scare in the middle of spring, one of those calls that drops out the floor. I jumped on a flight even though I had a meeting the next morning with people whose names used to scare me. I spent the week shuttling her mom to appointments and making soup like an old man. Everything ended up okay. The doctor used the word benign, and we both cried in a hospital hallway and then felt dumb about it and started laughing for no reason. Her dad clapped me on the back with that silent approval dads give when they don't know how to say thank you for showing up out loud. Somewhere between airport gates and FaceTimes from grocery stores, I bought a ring. I wasn't looking for one that day. I was killing time between a meeting and a flight, ducked into a little shop because it was raining, and saw it in a case that didn't even have good lighting. Simple, nothing flashy. I carried it around for a week like a secret that hummed. I almost did it at a show when our favorite band played the song we used to butcher in my car, but that felt too much like a movie and not enough like us. I almost did it over dinner, but then our waitress spilled water all over my lap and we couldn't stop laughing and it didn't feel right to interrupt that kind of joy with anything planned. I ended up asking her in the park, at the bench where we used to start those walks. No audience, no big speech. I told her I wanted to keep choosing her like this on Tuesdays, in flooded apartments, in airports, in arguments we resolved instead of abandon. She looked at me like she was watching a magic trick she knew the secret to and still couldn't believe. She said yes before I could finish the sentence. We're not perfect now. We still talk through stupid things like dish soap brands. I still have to remind myself to close the loop when I say I'll call. She still hates when I leave one sock on a chair. But we've built something I can stand in without feeling like the floor is going to give. I used to think second chances fell out of the sky. They don't. You make them every day until they add up to a life. Update 3. We didn't pick a date so much as we circled a season and kept moving toward it. Her program in Lisbon got extended another 6 months if she wanted it. We sat on my kitchen floor with a fridge buzzing like a mosquito and a calculator between us, and it turned out Shenzhen rules don't care how much you love someone. I could hop back and forth in chunks, but not for as long as we wanted. The visa solution someone forwarded us at 2 in the morning translated into be married on paper so you can apply for a family reunification card, which sounded unromantic until we were standing shoulder to shoulder in a Portuguese government office while a fan pushed hot air around and a clerk with a chewed up pen said, "Testemunhas." And we looked at each other because we didn't have any. 2 people from the line agreed to sign for us. One of them wore a Benfica scarf and shook my hand like we just closed a deal. I stumbled over Sam and she said it for me, soft, and we all laughed. I thought it would feel like cheating ourselves out of something, but we walked out into a narrow street that smelled like oranges and diesel and ate custard tarts standing up at a metal counter, powdered sugar hitting her black dress in constellations. She cried once, quick, the kind of cry that lifts instead of caves. I bought a core keychain shaped like a tram from a tourist stall because I wanted to carry the day around like a pocket-sized proof. We called our parents and then put our phones away. On the walk home we crossed a square where a busker was playing a song we used to butcher, and we didn't make a scene about fate, we threw a coin and kept going. We still wanted to do it with our people. We picked the end of summer in a friend's backyard with big trees that dropped those spiky seed pods that look like medieval weapons. We were proud of how adult we were, how we budgeted and booked things in advance and had a folder of emailed contracts with bolded sections about weather contingencies. The day of, the sky went the color of a bruise and made a liar out of us. Thunder like furniture being dragged overhead. The power on the block cut out 10 minutes before anyone was supposed to sit. The rental company's tent had a seam that led in exactly one determined stream of rainwater that found the middle of our makeshift aisle like it had a map. Our efficient texted a selfie from a Walgreens clinic with a feverish sheen and a caption that was just, "I'm so sorry." I thought I felt calm because I groaned. Then I realized my hands were flat and useless at my sides like I was waiting for someone else to move me. Brittany put her hair up with a stray bobby pin I swear appeared out of thin air, kissed my wrist, and said, "Okay, plan C." Neighbors I didn't know draped extension cords like garland once somebody wheeled over a generator that coughed awake. We strung Christmas lights between the trees and it made everyone look taller. Her mom, who was never liked microphones, stepped in to officiate with a printed out email of the ceremony stripped crease into fifths. She smoothed it against her thigh and cleared her throat and I watched her hand stop shaking as soon as she started talking about the way Brittany taped birthday cards under the kitchen table as a kid so she could look up at them like stars. The generator hiccuped and died once and came back and nobody flinched. We gave the rings to my cousin's kid because he's very serious about very small jobs. He did a perfect march up the aisle clutching a pillow with both arms, like he was carrying a slumbering cat. Somewhere between the vows and the part where you say I do in the same language on the same continent, he blinked slow and set the pillow down on a chair to scratch his knee and both rings rolled like tiny escape artists into the grass. It wasn't slapstick, it was quiet, a collective breath as 20 adults suddenly pretended they weren't scanning the ground with their eyes. I could feel panic trying to climb my spine. Instead of letting it, I reached into my pocket and took out the cork tram keychain. I slid the little metal ring off, and it wasn't pretty, it had a dent from where my keys bit it, but it was round and it was from the day we said sim, so it counted. I told her we'd swap it later and she smiled like we had planned it this way all along. Someone found the band of hers under a wet leaf after we kissed. Mine turned up an hour later stuck in the grass by the bar, shining like it wanted to be dramatic. My dad asked if he could say something and my chest got tight like old stories were climbing back on the table. He raised his glass and started down the well-worn path of how man in our family don't. And then he stopped like he'd tripped on a word, looked at me across the battery-powered candles and said, simply, "I missed a lot. I'm trying not to anymore." It wasn't eloquent. He sat down before anyone clapped. I exhaled a June I didn't know I was still holding. We didn't have our first dance track queued because Spotify decided offline mode was a suggestion. A friend who used to play open mics took the guitar from the corner and said he didn't know our song but he knew songs like it, and that was enough. We danced under a sky that finally cracked open into clear. When the generator sighed off for the last time, everyone howled like kids at sleepover and kept talking in the dim, and the dark didn't feel like a problem, it felt like being let in on a secret. We didn't honeymoon so much as aim the car at a map. We made it 3 hours out before a belt snapped and the engine light lit up like Christmas on the dashboard. The tow guy's name was Roy and he had a tattoo of a dice set that looked like it lost as often as it won. We spent the night in a motel with a bus's on sign. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and stories we weren't in on. We'd ate pizza on a suitcase because the table wobbled. She fell asleep with her head on my thigh while a documentary about deep sea fish murmured in the background. I lay there thinking about how expensive weddings are and how nothing about that night cost more than a tank of gas and I didn't want to be anywhere else. Lisbon took us back the way good cities do, like we were just stepping into a paused frame. The program wrapped for good this time. On her second to last day, we took the long tram on purpose even though you could walk faster, just to let it announce the corner for us. We stopped at the registry office to pick up our official marriage certificate because the first one had my middle name spelled like a different person. The same clerk was there, same chewed pen, and she winked when she handed it over. On the flight home, we did the thing where you make up lies for other passengers to keep from thinking about turbulence. The guy in 21 was definitely a children's book illustrator. The woman with the orange scarf was going to leave someone at the airport. We weren't writing tragedy into strangers to balance our luck. We were just awake to the way anything can be happening in the seat next to you and you'd never know. We caught a dog without meaning to. A storm rolled through and the next morning, there was a shivering, mud-splattered thing under my car that looked like it had been built from parts other dogs didn't want. Brittany coaxed him out with leftover chicken and the patience of someone who reads instructions all the way to the end. He had 2 different colored eyes and a personality like crumpled paper slowly smoothing out. We took him to the vet and they scanned for a chip, and the receptionist said, "No owner," in a tone that meant, "You too." We named him Tram because we were those people now. He followed me from room to room for a week like he was waiting to be voted off the island. The first time he fell asleep without twitching, Brittany whispered, "He believes us." We looked at each other because we knew what that sentence was about besides a dog. We didn't post a lot. We sent pictures to the people who would care. We fought one night about cookware because we both wanted to make dinner our way and it took an hour to realize we were arguing about control more than sout pants. I wanted the kitchen to run like an experiment and she wanted it to be a party. We put onions into separate skillets like we were drafting teams and made 2 versions of the same dish. Both were good and both were wrong and we laughed because of course we are 2 people. The next night we cooked in the same pan and I tried it her way. Brittany's old landlord emailed us out of nowhere with a photo of a water-stained box he'd found tucked behind a utility panel during some renovation. It was labeled in her handwriting from years ago. Inside were 3 journals that hadn't been destroyed in the flood after all. We read them on the floor like we were at a museum about a person we loved. I watched her read her own words from nights that were a meteor shower and mornings that were chalk dust. She kept closing the book and putting her hand over her mouth like she could taste the past. I asked if she wanted to share any of it, and she shook her head and then, later, slid one toward me. There was an entry where she wrote that she didn't want to be brave anymore, she wanted to be ordinary with someone. I thought about the motel lemon cleaner and the generator and Tram snoring like a bad harmonica and felt like we built exactly what she wrote when she didn't think anyone would ever read it. The last crazy thing was quiet. At 3 a.m. A couple weeks ago, I woke to her staring at the ceiling with that wide-awake look people get when their brain is loud. She whispered, "Sometimes I'm scared I only get this because the first version of us broke." I didn't tell her a story about fate to make it easy. I said, "Me too, sometimes," because it was true, and then, "But I think breakage is how light figured out where to come in." We lay there listening to Tram chase something in his sleep and a garbage truck clatter down our street and the radiator knock like a polite ghost. The fear didn't vanish like movie magic. It sat next to us and then it got bored. We fell back asleep. We sent thank you notes late. We mailed one to the clerk in Lisbon, addressed to the lady with the chewed pen. We tucked the cork ring into a little box on our dresser. Sometimes I see it when I'm looking for my wallet. I turn it in my fingers and remember powdered sugar on a black dress and a generator coughing and a backyard full of faces lit up like their own constellations. I used to think the good parts of life would feel like fireworks. Lately, they feel like walking home together after, carrying the lighter in your pocket, knowing you can make a small flame whenever you need to see where you're going. Update 4. The letter came on a Tuesday that already felt like a bruise. White envelope, city seal, the kind of official font that makes your stomach go small. Our building had been sold. 90 days to vacate. We stood in the kitchen with Tram's water bowl clicking against the tile as he lapped at it, and I could feel that old urge to go flat and let decisions happen to me. Brittany put the letter under the magnet shaped like a sardine we bought in Lisbon and said, "Okay. Let's go see what else our life can look like." We found a place that didn't make sense on paper. 2 floors of a row house with a staircase that creaked like it had opinions, a backyard the size of a postage stamp with a mulberry tree that dyed the squirrel's feet purple for a week in June, and a shed with a door that stuck 2 inches before it closed. The previous owner was a retired music teacher who had lined the living room with built-in shelves and then left 2 milk crates of sheet music like she'd stepped out mid-lesson. There was a half-rusted nail on the back of the pantry door with a key on string that didn't fit any lock we could find. We took the place because when we stood in it, it felt like we were catching something falling and realizing it was light. The first night, the transformer at the end of the block blew like a cartoon idea of pow. Streetlights went down in a ripple. Our neighbor spilled into the sidewalk like an invitation no one had planned. A kid from 2 doors had overwheeled out a grill shaped like a flying saucer. Someone passed us a bag of corn still in husks. An old man with a baseball cap that said, "Albany" hummed while he snapped beans into a bowl that looked older than all of us. A teenage boy I'd later learned was named Malik dragged out a dented cello case and sat on our stoop. He tuned by phone flashlight and then played something low and sure and way too big for our block. The sound went up into the dark and felt like it came back as weather. "Tram, who usually startles at a pan drop 2 rooms away, put his chin on his paws and blinked slow like he'd been waiting for this specific song. When Power flicked back with a collective cheer, it felt almost rude. We clapped anyway. 2 days later, while I was carrying a box labeled Winter in marker that was losing its fight with sweat, Tram slipped through the half-open gate because a squirrel flicked its tail wrong. 1 second of fur and arrogance and then empty air. The panic didn't climb me this time, it sprinted. We posted on the neighborhood app that exists solely to argue about parking and exchange patio furniture. We walked streets until the map on my phone was a web. I pictured the worst dumb things: a car, an alley, a hole in a fence he couldn't unfind. At midnight we expanded the ring of our route like we were 2 magnets testing for pull. At 1 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A picture of Tram sitting like a loaf beside a familiar stoop, head cocked toward a door I knew all the way down to the squeak of its mail slot. Our old apartment. He had walked himself home to the version of us he first believed in. He looked up at me when I got there like, "Where have you been?" I sat on the concrete with my back against the door I don't have a key to anymore and cried in a way that didn't crack me open so much as rinsed me. I clipped his leash and told him, "We moved, buddy," and said it out loud like I was telling myself, too. We got him a new tag the next day with our names and our new street and, on the back, "If I'm here, I'm lost. Please call my people." He slept with his whole head on my foot that night like he was plugging himself into something. Moving means things you don't remember owning reveal themselves. The stuck shed door gave up on the 3rd try when I nudged it with my hip and swore at it gently. Inside, on a rafter shelf, a shoebox. I thought for 1 second about haunted adult teeth and then lifted the lid. A disposable camera, 2 rolls of film in black canisters, a napkin from a diner I recognized by its red checker border, and a program from a middle school spring concert circuit a decade ago with Malik J. Cello circled in blue pen 3 times. The music teacher. We developed the film at the drugstore that still has a photo counter. Half the pictures were of a backyard full of kids with plastic recorders and a woman you could tell had the kind of laugh that took over her whole face. The other half were of empty rooms with light slanting in like advice. We wrote our new address on an envelope with "Found in your shed" and slipped it through the slot of the house 2 blocks up with a porch crowded by potted basil. A week later, a woman with hair pinned back by 2 pencils showed up with a plant in a cracked terracotta pot and said she was Linda, the retired teacher's daughter. She held the photos with her fingertips like they might bruise. "I thought they were gone," she said, quiet. She asked if she could come in for a minute, and when she saw our shelves, she put her hands on a stack of yellowing songbooks and said, she always swore she'd come back for these. She didn't cry exactly. She exhaled something that looked like 20 years of teaching in a single breath. Before she left, she said, "Do you own a piano?" We laughed. She pointed to the window. An hour later, 3 of her cousins who all looked like variations on the same person carried in an upright with a chipped corner and the deepest E I've ever heard. It had a brass plate that read Kimball and a dime lodged under a high C that made it ring like a bell. "She taught on this for 32 years, Linda said. "It hates humidity and it will need a friend. Be the friend." We promised. I started picking out the song we butchered in my car, the one my friend played at the wedding when Spotify threw a tantrum. My left hand tried to be a grown-up and my right hand admitted it wasn't yet. I learned 1 measure, then 2. Post-its ballooned above middle C, like a meta-music, Steph. The first time I got through it without lying to myself about the rhythm, I yelled for Brittany from the kitchen and then played so badly my phone auto-corrected me to chopstick. She beamed like I'd just learned how to say my own name. She slid onto the bench beside me, hip to hip, and we fumbled the chorus together, her finger marking the spot I always try to skip. My dad showed up with a toolbox 3 Saturdays in a row without announcing himself. Each time he knocked in that specific cadence that says family without having to be asked. He replaced a wonky outlet in the hallway without breaking the wall and taught me how to shut water off faster than panic can argue. He stood with me by the mulberry tree and said, "I should have shown you more of this," and then, before I could say anything back, he asked where we keep our extension cords. In the late afternoon, his hands started to shake the way they have since he hit 60. He wrapped his fingers around a coffee mug like it was a secret. When he left, he patted Tram like he was looking for his own exit line and said, "Good dog," like it was heavy. Brittany was at the table more than usual spread of drafts and yellow legal pads, a little island built out of her handwriting. The small press that had reached out after she at a local event wanted to make a slim book out of the journal pages she could stand to let go of. Not a diary. Fragments and essays that varied the same weight. She kept telling me it was less about the past and more about the tool it's made her build. The first night she read something to a crowd who didn't know us, I thought I was okay. Then a sentence about a person who forgets to call even when he knows calling is the hinge made me bite my cheek hard enough to taste blood. She doesn't make me good in those pages. She makes me true. On the walk home she asked if any of it embarrassed me. I told her embarrassment is the jacket of who I used to be. I can still find it in the closet if I want to wear it. But I don't. I held her bag while she stuffed flyers in her coat pocket and she smiled like someone who chose her own weight to carry and then found it wasn't a punishment. Crazy came back sideways on a Wednesday when a car didn't stop where it was supposed to. The sound is the part I keep. Not the crunch so much as the thunk of inevitable. I wasn't the one hit. It was a cyclist at the corner, by the Bogia with Anita on Peach in the window. He slid and didn't get up. People did the unhelpful chorus thing at first, oh my god, someone call, and then bodies organized. Malik, walking home from school with his backpack doing that one strap thing, sprinted into the street with both arms out like a conductor telling horns to hold. Brittany knelt, one palm up like she was telling him her own heartbeat. I found myself back on the phone with a voice that said, in a tone that had to lie there all day, what's your emergency? I described our cross streets and the way he was breathing in the car that hadn't made a decision whether to stay or go. We made a triangle around the cyclist and kept traffic from turning him into a statistic. The ambulance took 6 minutes. It felt like a season. They said his collarbone was going to hate him but he'd live. When the back doors thumped shut, I realized my hands had done the whole thing without looking to my hand for notes. After, in the kitchen, I shook so hard the cork ring in a little dish by the keys rattled. Brittany put both palms on my chest like she was teaching me a drum. We didn't say what if more than once. We let the adrenaline walk itself down. That night, I watered the basil Linda had given us and watched the dirt take it like it had always planned to drink. We did a colonoscopy of our calendar and found a weekend that didn't belong to anyone. We pointed the car at the lake with the ruins of those bathhouses from 100 years ago. The kind of place where you say ruins and it means 2 brick walls in your imagination. On the way, the check engine light coughed at us like it was trying to get in on the conversation. We ignored it for 2 exits, then pulled into a gas station named after a last name. The attendant had a braid all the way down her back and a sweatshirt that said Luz in block letters, which made me think of Lisbon by accident. She checked a thing and tapped another thing and told us we weren't going to explode, but we also weren't going to make it to a second state. There was a sandwich case with 3 options and a basket of bananas with freckles. We sat on the curb with our feet in the sun and split something labeled turkey in a way that only suggested turkey. A guy pushed a stroller past with a baby in it making little boss sounds. He stopped, pointed at Tram, and said, "Dog," with such authority that Tram, who remains easily moved by compliments, sat straighter. It was nothing. It was the best part of the day. Back home, we adjusted to the house in the way you adjust to a new pair of shoes you plan on wearing into every room of your life. We learn the sounds, the radiators, off B, the wind that makes the bathroom fan say someone's name in a way that is impossible to prove. We picked paint that looked gray at the store and green at home and just went with it. We taped off baseboards and got high on the math of corners. At 2 in the morning, I woke up to Brittany staring at the ceiling. Do you ever feel like every time we fix something, we're just asking the universe out loud to break something else? She asked. I could have given her a speech about gratitude. I reached for her hand instead. I like that we can fix things now, I said. We laid there while the house did its house things and the neighborhood did its night things and Tram made the sound he makes when he is chasing something in his sleep that he is fast enough to catch. The fear didn't need to be argued with. It just needed a hand placed on it like a paper on a desk so it didn't blow away. The one thing I didn't expect was the email from the clerk in Lisbon. Subject line, do you still have the cork? I had to read it twice before I realized she meant the keychain. She said she was clearing an old drawer and found our thank you note under a stack of forms with coffee rings. She was getting married in September. She wrote, "It would make me happy if your marriage paper day was at my wedding as a story I tell to someone when the power goes out." She attached a photo of her fiancé holding a fan like a trophy. We couldn't make the date, because life is not a movie and flights cost money and Tram is not a suitcase pet, but we wrote her back with a picture of our backyard strung with lights that look like sturdy stars and a little cork ring sleeping in its dish beside a paper clip and 2 screws that don't know where they belong yet. We found a way to be ridiculous without motion. We threw a party for the house. Not a bait thing. People wandered through and pointed at the piano and at the sheet music and at the crease where the tape bled and made a dark line on the wall like a vein. My dad stood with Linda and talked about teachers in a tone that told me a piece of his private life had been held quietly in the shape of a woman at a keyboard for longer than I knew. Malik played a song I didn't recognize and made the air behave. At midnight, when the last person left, Brittany put her hand flat on the wall and said, "Thank you, house, like we were that kind of people now. Maybe we are. A last crazy thing didn't announce itself. I was heading out the door, latte in a travel mug warm against my palm, keys in my teeth, tram keychain tapping my thigh with each step. A quiet piece of paper sat on the little table, a one-line digital test strip balanced on the edge of a saucer with a coffee ring ghosting its middle. Not dramatic pink, not a billboard. A second line so faint I could have missed it if the morning light had been a little more smug. I stood there breathing like I had to earn it. I didn't call her name in a movie way. I set the mug down so softly it didn't click, and I walked back to the bedroom. She looked up at me with that too awake look people get when they've been alone with a thought for longer than is kind. I held up the strip between two fingers like a small animal that might bolt. She said, I didn't want to say it wrong, in a voice people use when the thing is both fragile and funny. We didn't plan a speech. We sat cross-legged on the floor with our knees touching and let the possible hang with us, unspooling at its own cautious speed. We said the word doctor the way someone might test a note before a song starts. We said, if it isn't, it's still us. Tram put his head in her lap like he was blessing something. We didn't make a promise we couldn't cash yet. We put the little strip in the ceramic dish beside the cork ring. Small proof, next to small proof. I used to think you needed fireworks to know you were alive. That morning felt like a wick lit in a quiet room, enough light to see the way forward, 2 mugs wet with coffee rings, a piano with a dime bell C, and a dog who finally believes us without checking the door.